Hey guys, I'm back with a new Photoshop tutorial. I'm Andrei from PSD Box, and today I want to show you how to create a simple but pretty nice manipulation in Photoshop. And this is the image that we're going to start with, and I want to show you how to create this. So I will show you how to make these light effects, these color tones, and how to create these shadows, and how to change the background and all that kind of things. It's not a difficult tutorial. I hope you will like it. On my website you will find the links to the stock images that I used to make this tutorial. They're all free stock images from DeviantArt. So I hope you will like it, and let's get started. Well, the first thing we want to do obviously is open our background image, and I just used 4 stock images for this. This is the image that I started with. It's a small resolution image, but I couldn't find anything else. So if you want to find a high resolution image of the same kind like you see here, you can do that. We have to remove the sky and replace it with something else, and for that what I will do is I will use 2 selection tools. The first one is the magic wand, and I use a tolerance of 10, and the sample size is 5 by 5 average. Just click here on the sky and you can see you can select a chunk of it, and then if you want to include areas to your selection, just press the shift key, hold it, and you will see a plus icon appearing under the tool, and just keep adding areas to your selection until you select the sky like you can see here, and then go on the left side and do the same. Select everything like that, and for this bottom part what I did is I used the quick selection tool. I'll zoom in a bit and just start painting like this to select these areas, and for the lower part I'll decrease the size of the brush a bit and do something like this. We'll have to refine the selection, but this is our first raw selection, and when you have the selection ready, just click the layer mask icon and you can see it comes up inverted, so I'll have to press Ctrl Command I. Now I have to refine these edges, so what I will do now is create the layer below this, and I'll fill it with a solid color just so I can see the edges better. Let's fill that with this dark blue. And if you zoom in, you will see how the edges look like, and you can see they're not looking very pretty right now, so we have to solve that. Before going into the refine edge, what I would like to do is fix this edge with the brush tool. This is a straight edge, so we can use the brush tool and the shift key, and I'll show you how. So just select the brush tool, make sure you're using a smaller size brush, like a 20 pixels or something like that. Increase the hardness to 100%. The brush size that I'm using is 15 pixels, maybe a bit bigger. Well, 15 is okay. Open the brush panel and just make sure that the spacing is set, usually set to 25, but that's too much, it's too high, so reduce it to about 5 or something like that, so that we don't have jumps into the lines here that we're going to create. And now just change the color to white and put the edge of the brush right there to that edge, like you can see there. Click once, click once like that, scroll down, and right here you can see I put the brush right there. I press and hold the shift key and click, and what it does, it just creates a straight line between the 2 points. I want to show you that right here. If I click here, I create a point revealing part of the sky, and if I want to create a straight line to this point, I just press and hold the shift key and click again, and that's how you can create straight lines like that using the shift key. And here on the bottom, what I will do is switch the color now to black and zoom in a bit, and I just want to remove these parts here. Here I will do the same shift thing to create straight lines, but just removing these parts here before we go into the refine edge. And let's remove this part right here as well. Great. Now you can see this line here, this white line and this jagged edges. We're gonna fix this with the refine edge. I'm using Photoshop CS6, so I can right click on the layer mask and choose refine mask. If you cannot do that, what you can do is control click the layer mask, select any selection tool from here from the toolbar, and click the refine edge button, and here you can edit this. Okay, pressing the control key and zooming in like that. What I want to do is shift the edge on the negative values there and increase the feather about 1 pixel or something like that, and 1.5 pixels, maybe it's a bit better. Leave the contrast to how it is and increase the smooth to just 5, maybe. That's okay. Okay, I think that looks nice. Let's check the edges here. I'll probably shift it even more, like so, and probably increase the contrast slightly to 42%. I don't want to sharpen the edges like that. That's too sharp. I want to have them a bit smoother. That's more realistic. Okay, let's take a look at this part. We still have to remove these white bits on the corners, but we'll do that manually. Okay, the selection looks nice. I'll output to layer mask so that it updates this layer mask that I already have, and click OK. And now I will get the brush tool, make sure that I have a hardness of about 90%, and just paint with black to get rid of this white bits here on the corners. If you take care a bit of the details, things will look better. Okay, so we have everything ready here. One other thing that I want to do is make sure that I have a straight line here, like so. Okay, now we're good to go. I'll delete this background. I no longer need it. I just wanted to have it there so I can see the edges a bit better. And I'll change the name of this layer to columns. And now we are ready to add our new sky. Well, before we do that, let's fix this part here on the top. See this black line here? I will select the layer and I will use the content aware fill. You can also do with the clone stamp if you are using an older version of Photoshop. So what you do with the content aware fill is select the area that you want to fill, right click and choose fill, and from the use choose content aware, click OK, and that fills this area seamlessly. Great, now let's move on and open our sky image. This is from DeviantArt. This image is from a pack. I'll give you the link to the stock images, so there you can download the full pack if you want and use other images from that pack. So let's copy that and paste it right here, and we'll have to change the size of it, so I'll press Ctrl+Command+T and make it a bit smaller, pressing and holding the shift key so I can constrain the proportions. And what I would like to do here is move this right there, maybe make it a bit bigger. I don't want to see that mountain. If you like it and you want to leave it there, you can do that. But I want to have it like there. That way I have a more minimalistic effect. I want to keep things simple, but what I want to do is have this second planet, maybe make it slightly bigger. I want to have this second planet and this bright area here between these two columns, because here is where I will add that man standing there. And I want to have a contrast there. Otherwise, if I put this dark side, maybe the man will, it's difficult to distinguish it from the background, and this will make it look a bit more dramatic. Great, now we have the sky in place. The next thing we want to do is change this ground here, because you can see these shadows here are not matching the light. So what we have to do is open our stock folder again, and I used this image. So I will only select the ground area, so Ctrl+Command+C, Ctrl+W to close it, and I'll paste it on top of everything, and I'll rename this to ground. And I'll rename this layer to sky. I will clip the ground layer to the columns layer by right clicking and choosing create clipping mask, and Now I'll have to make it smaller, so press Ctrl Command T, and with the Shift key to constrain the proportions, we'll make it smaller. We have to match the perspective here a bit. If you take a look at the original ground, you can see how it looks. If I leave this like that, it will not look realistic, so you'll have to drag it lower. For now, I will leave it like this, a bit smaller. I will leave it right here because I want to mask it, and after that I'll move it and resize it and make it fit my perspective there. But now I'll create an inverted layer mask by pressing and holding the Alt key and clicking on this layer mask icon. And now I'll start painting with white to reveal the ground right here, like so. Great, so now I have the new ground in place, and now what I will do is move it around and find the right perspective. But before I do that, I have to unlink this from the layer mask, otherwise I will move the layer mask as well. And with the move tool, you can move this around. You can see if you leave it like that, it's not looking realistic at all. So you want to drag it down a bit and move it more towards the left. Something like that. Okay, now that looks a lot more realistic. Now I will leave it there, and let's move on and add our model. This is the image that I used. I will not spend time extracting it from the background because I already have it extracted. It's really easy to do it with the quick selection tool. So what you do is just select the quick selection tool, make sure you have the auto enhance activated, and start selecting the man like that. It's really easy. Do the same on this other side. Don't worry too much about the edges because we're gonna make it so small that the edges are not going to be visible almost. So do something like this. Make sure you get most of the man selected. You can also use the refine edge if you want, and when you're done, just click the layer mask icon, make sure you enhance a bit the edges and move it to your document. Okay, so this is the model here. I have it already extracted, as I said, and I'll move it right there. And now we're going to make it smaller, quite small, something like this, about 6% of the original size, maybe even smaller than this. And this will create a big impact, seeing these big columns here and this small person standing right there. Okay, and what I will do is I'll make it sharper with using the Smart Sharpen, because when I made it smaller, it lost a lot of quality. Okay, so let's leave it right there, standing there in the middle, and let's name this man, and we'll start making shadows now. Let's start with the man itself. So what I will do is just Alt click and drag it on the bottom there under this original layer and name it man shadow, and you can see I have an exact duplicate of it, and I'll press Ctrl Command U to open the hue saturation and decrease the lightness to -100. This will create a silhouette of the man, and I'll press Ctrl Command T and flip it vertical, and I'll place it right there, and now I will use this to create the shadow. So what you do is use the perspective, because I want to make it a bit wider on the bottom part. And now with the distort, you can see these options by pressing, like, right clicking on this shadow. Okay, and with the distort, now I can click here on the middle and and just move it like that. I want to have a shadow that is not straight like this. Let's make it on an angle like that, and probably lift this up a bit, and I will leave it like that, and just zoom in a bit so I can see where I place this. With the arrow keys on your keyboard, you can move that. Okay, and now I'll smoothen it using Gaussian blur. Not much, just let's say 1 pixel or something like that. Yeah, that looks nice. And I'll drop the opacity to, let's say, 80%. 75% is okay. And now we have to do the same with the columns, but we cannot duplicate the layers. So we'll have to do it manually. And what we will do is create a new layer here and on top of the ground, and we'll name it column shadow. And we will use the polygonal lasso tool because we have to create straight lines. And we'll create the shadow on the same angle as the man shadow. So we will start from right here and try to match the same angle more or less. Let's do it again. Like that. And we will fill this with black. And don't worry about this line here, we will fix it. And let's do the same here. Something like that. And fill that with black as well. And now we have to mask this, but we already have a layer mask here for the ground. So we will take advantage of that. So I'll select it, press Alt and click and drag it on top of the column shadow. And we can see we magically masked this. Okay, and now we have to apply the same filters, Gaussian blur, to make it have the same shadow. I applied it twice, have the same softness, sorry, as the man shadow. And now we'll have to use the same opacity, 75%. And if you want, you can make it you can make a fade effect on the shadow, but I think it's not necessary. Great, so we have the shadows now, everything looks a bit more realistic, but we have to make even more shadows. I'll create a new layer on top of everything and I'll name it soft shadows. And with the brush tool, I'll start painting, especially here. You can see this light here is not realistic. That makes me think that the light comes from the left side. Okay, so what I will do is use a low opacity and flow, let's say 10 and 10, and just make a few passes. Make sure you use a soft brush. Okay, and just paint there to kind of mask that shadow, and here on the bottom. Do not paint too much here on the sides, just here on the center of the column and here on the bottom. Zoom out a bit. Here on the top as well. And maybe here on this side. Do not paint here because it's already dark. Okay, I think now it looks a bit better. I'll show you the before and after in just a moment. If you want, you can use the same layer mask here to make sure you're not painting over the sky. That way I can also paint on top of this shadow right here and this one right there. Okay, so this is the shadow layer. Let me show you the before and after. Before and after. See that? Maybe here on the lower part as well. Great, now we have the shadows created. Let's start making some adjustments. We'll start with the columns layer. So I'll create a curves adjustment here between the ground and the columns. So it's clipped to the columns. It only affects this layer. And we're going into the blue layer, and I have a few points here, and I'll give you the settings that I have. And the settings that I have for these points are, for the first one, input. The input that I have is 67 and the output is 71. Then I have a second point here with input 106 and output 104, and a third one with an input of 196 and output 173. This creates this sort of split tone effect. It makes the highlights yellow and the darks a bit of more blue. And here on the RGB, to add more contrast, I have 2 points, one with input 107 and output 82. So we darkened a bit the midtones and shadows. And now second point with input 194 and output 188, just to make the highlights a bit brighter, and you can see the contrast that creates. And now that we have the shadows, let's make some lights. We'll create, well, let's start with the man. I want to create some highlights over his shoulders right here. You will see that in a second. So I'll double click the layer to open the layer styles and set an inner shadow. I'll deactivate use global light, set the angle to 90 degrees, and let's say a distance of about 2 pixels and a size of 1 or 2 pixels. Let's leave 2 pixels and we'll see. We'll change the blend mode to color dodge, and we'll use a bright yellow color like this, just to create a highlight, because he's facing the light and we want to create that light effect on his shoulders. Those are called rim lights. And we have to do the same with the column, so let's double click on the columns layer as well and do the same. Inner shadow, distance set to 0 this time, deactivate use global light, or maybe we will add some distance, about 3 pixels and a size of 5 or something like that. Change the color, the blend mode to color dodge, and a similar color but not too strong. I want the effect to be softer, so I'll increase the size to 10 and maybe change the color to something a bit more orangey, like so, and I'll click OK. But once you do that, you will notice a problem. This effect is also added on the edges of your document. I don't know if you can see it, but it's there. If that happens to you, what you can do is turn the effects into its own layer. So just right click on the FX link and choose create layer, and now you can create a layer mask for this. You can see it moved this inner shadow that I just created to its own layer, and now I can create a layer mask for this and just paint with the brush tool with black to remove the effect from the areas where I don't need it, like for example here on the edges. Like that. Great, now I just removed the effect from the areas where it's not needed because it was not realistic, and now I can enable or disable this layer, or I can change the color of it. So if I want to have it more saturated, I can do that. If I want to make it darker, I can do that. I can change the tone of it. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it now. And let's leave it like that, and let's move on. So now that we have that, I want to add a few more lights here on these 2 columns. So what I'll do is create a new layer and change the blend mode to, let's say, you can try overlay or color dodge. Let's try overlay and see how that works. I'll sample the color and then change it, something like that, and let's see how that looks. It's too strong. Well, actually, let's decrease the opacity of the brush to 20 and 20 and use that shift thing that I used earlier. So I'll just click once there, press and hold the shift key and click there, and then a second pass, and here as well, but I'll use a bigger brush. Make sure you use a soft brush, 1 and 2. It looks nice, but it's a bit too yellow, so what I will do is press Ctrl Command U to open the hue, saturation, and drop the saturation a bit, and probably increase the lightness. See the effect? Just a touch of light there. Maybe on the lower part with the big eraser, soft eraser, I will get rid of of the effect. Okay, now it looks better. Great, now we can move on, and what I want to do before I make the final adjustments is create a new layer, and I want to create a couple of glows of light there. I'll change the blend mode of this new layer to screen, and I'll use a dark yellow color, orange, something like this. Let's see how that works. And I'll click once there, but with the brush tool, not with the eraser tool. So it's a bit too strong. That's okay, well, a bit bigger. Like that, and maybe one other, another one right here, but with a darker tone, so that the effect is not too strong. Okay, just a couple of glows of light there, like that. And we're ready to make the final adjustments. Let's create a color lookup. If you are using an older version of Photoshop and you don't have the color lookup, you can try something else. I'll show you that in a second. On the color lookup, I used the edgy amber, and I left the blend mode to normal, and I set the opacity to 20%. If you don't have this adjustment, what you can do, use a solid color and use an orange tone, like let's say this one, and try blend modes. Hard light looks nice. Let's say vivid light. Vivid light is better, but it's too strong. Well, something like this would give you a similar result. If you decrease the opacity to 20%, you can see you get sort of a similar effect to the one that I got here. So you can try that. And next, a solid color. And here we will use a blue tone like this. The exact color is not important, just a dark blue like this, and change the blend mode to exclusion and drop the opacity to 30%. And now for the final contrast, we will use a curves adjustment. And here we will go into the blues and just drag this up a bit and drag this down a bit. Just make sure that the line passes through this plus here, and this creates a split tone effect. And on the RGB, you can make it more contrasty if you like, by lowering the shadows and increasing the highlights a bit, not too much, something like that. Okay, and this is the final effect. You can see that with just 3 adjustments, you can make a very big change on your image. Okay, so that's all. I hope you liked this tutorial, and I hope that it was not too difficult to follow. As I said, on my website you will find the links to the stock images. I'm Andrei from PSD Box, and I'll see you on the next tutorial.